Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Very excited for today. We're going to have a fun one. First, it's going to be an amazing best of 5 between Razzer and xPedro, two phenomenal players in CRL going head-to-head in a special kind of draft. More on that in a minute. And then directly following that, a special edition of the $100 Open. Totally available for anybody. All the info for that will be live on Trovo at the end of the BO5. So right now we're live on both YouTube and Trovo. At the end of this match, we'll be doing a best of 5 on the other side, over on the Trovo side, or not best of 5, a $100 open tournament. Anyone can play. The password and name will be up there after we're done with the tournament today. And of course, we do that every single Wednesday as well. So make sure you never miss it. If you're not subscribing to me on YouTube already and following me on Trovo, go ahead and do it. Both of those so you never miss a moment. Today, very, very excited for Razzer versus Pedro, and more excited because we have a special guest joining me casting today, longtime Clash Royale pro, Kings Cup 2 champion, one of my favorites, a very smart guy to help with some analysis today. Vulcan is on the other line today. Vulcan, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thanks for gassing me up there.
Hey, of course. Yeah, I know you're, you and I have gotten to know each other a lot over the years. I'm a big fan of you as a player, and I love your insight into the game. And your YouTube channel has been great. People are really enjoying it a lot, so happy to have you here to talk us through the action. So here's the plan for today, guys. It's a best of 5 match between Razzer and xPedro. Here's the way it's going to work. We're doing a 6-card ban draft. So what does that mean? Well, first we're going to do a little coin flip, and the winner of that coin flip will choose whether to go first or second. Then they will pick their bans in order. Once we start the clock, they have 1 minute to select their ban, and then as soon as that ban is in, the next player has 1 minute to make their selection. And there's another set special rule. We divide it into 2 categories, troops and spells or buildings. You must select at least one of your 3 cards from each one of those groups. So you cannot have 3 troops selected. You cannot have 3 spells/buildings selected. We're trying different things out. Hopefully this is fun. We're going to have Vulcan here to help us with some analysis and get into the mix with it. So let's go ahead and start with our coin flip. And for the coin flip, I'm going to go ahead and flip my controller here. Heads or tails. Heads will mean that Pedro gets to decide if he is first or second, and tails will mean that Razzer gets to decide. So let me go ahead and flip it. It's going to be off camera, sorry. Did a little flip. And it is Pedro. So let's go ahead. Try is adminning the match inside of our chat. Let's go ahead and ask Pedro if he wants to go first and second. First or second. We're going to go ahead and get our draft board up. So we're going to see the choices as they make. Of course, Pedro gets to be the first person to choose whether he goes first or second in this one. And then, of course, they'll go back and forth. Vulcan, if you were choosing, would you rather go first or second in this situation?
I mean, I feel like you always want to go first when you're banning a card.
Well,
But it's also like, it's not that big of a deal, really.
very interesting here. Looks like Pedro wants to go second. And Razzer's going to start us off with a Firecracker ban. So Firecracker is the first card banned on our list. So now Pedro has 1 minute on the clock to make his ban. Vulcan, I'm guessing that you're a big fan. A lot of pros would like to have Firecracker out in general. Are you surprised by this ban at all?
Not really. It kind of takes like Royal Giants out of the mix is kind of what I'm thinking there.
All right, ban number 2 is in. Pedro with his first pick is Lava Hound. So no Firecracker and no Lava Hound at all for this game. So 2 of our first picks, of course, they may each only pick 1 more troop to ban once we get into it. So we'll see if they take a little more time with this next pick. They could also go double spell or double building. So you think Firecracker kind of takes Royal Giant out of the mix? Any thoughts on that Lava Hound ban?
I think, well, Lava Hound is a card that Razzer loves, and especially with the Firecracker being nerfed, it's a really good counter to Lava Hound, so it's kind of, it's a pretty smart pick there, because if he hadn't banned it, Razzer definitely would have used it.
Here we go. Miner is the next pick for Razzer, so not going to be worried about catching those. And these picks are coming in pretty quickly. Miner is the ban, and Pedro already with his ban. His second ban, Tornado. So here we go. After our first 2 rounds of bans, Firecracker is out, Lava Hound is out, Miner is out, and Tornado is out. We're on to our final ban. Thoughts on what's strong now with these bans, Vulcan?
Shoot, I'm gonna have to take a minute to think about this, honestly.
Hold on, it gets really crazy because now we already have these are banning fairly quickly. Poison now banned by Razzer, so not even needing that full minute on the clock. Razzer's third ban is in, and it's Poison. And so now Pedro can go ahead and ban either a troop or a spell. Yes, he could ban either one. We knew it was going to be a building or spell ban for Razzer as the last one. So let's go ahead and take a look at whatever Pedro's last ban is going to be. It can be anything, of course. And Sparky is the ban for Pedro's last one.
Huh. I did not expect that one.
Yeah, and you can hear some little emotes coming in. So here are the 6 bans for today's game. It's going to be the Lava Hound, the Firecracker, the Miner, and the Sparky, all troops that are out. And choosing only to go with 2 spells as the bans, it's going to be the Tornado and the Poison, both banned. So very, very interesting set of bans here. Vulcan, first of all, would you have been banning more from a troop perspective or from a spell building perspective? Is there? Actually, let me ask you a different question. Is there any card you're surprised not to see banned here by either one of these players?
I gotta be honest with you, I really like their bans. Like Poison is a really smart ban because xPedro always runs Graveyard, so he's just basically taking Graveyard out of the mix. So they kind of took out each other's strongest decks. So it's going to be interesting to see all of them running like their second favorite decks.
So these guys now have 3 minutes to make their decks. We're putting them on a timer right now. 3 minutes to figure out and make their deck picks. I, for one, am pretty excited about it. So Poison is off, so Pedro doesn't have that. And then looking at Pedro's bans, what do you think about Pedro's bans as they relate to what Razzer typically does?
I think they're spot on. The only thing that was weird to me is that who was it? Razzer banned Tornado?
No, Pedro banned Tornado. The bans, so Razzer's bans in order: Firecracker, Miner, and Poison. And Pedro's bans in order: Lava Hound, Tornado, and Sparky.
I'm surprised that Razzer banned Miner. I really am. I thought that Pedro would have banned Miner and Razzer would have banned Tornado. So it's kind of interesting to see that play out. But other than that, I don't have too much to say about it. Pretty good bans.
Yeah, so right now, the guys are taking a few minutes to build their decks. There's 2 minutes left on the clock. We're experimenting with different ban systems. Last time out, if you were here yesterday for the match between Bag and Boss, we went with pre-selected double bans from both players, banning 1 spell or building and banning 1 troop. And that was interesting today, this whole new system. So, when we get to 100 cards, it starts to get to a question where you're like, what is the appropriate number of bans? And this could be totally too much. 6 cards banned could be going way overboard, rather than just 4, but 2 between each player. But who knows? Vulcan, do you expect that we'll still see some stuff that's pretty meta in this conversation, or do you think that we're going to see some stuff sort of outside of the norm with this collection of bans?
It's going to be interesting because I definitely expect to see some Royal Hogs with a Sparky ban. Both of them like to run Royal Hogs, so it'll be I feel like that's kind of the mind game here right now.
So Fireball is still in there.
Yeah, but the Firecracker is a really good support to Royal Hogs, so that'll kind of be interesting to see, like, what are they subbing for that Firecracker? Maybe, like, we'll see some Magic Archer Royal Hogs decks. That's probably what I'd be running right now if I was playing.
Yeah, Magic Archer Royal Hogs. 1 minute warning on deck selection. Of course, Bomb Tower is still viable as well. So a lot of cards that deal with Splash are still in. Let's go ahead and put those bans back up one more time. And there you can see them again. I'm going to go ahead and jump on Royale API for a second and just see when we ban these cards, what decks come up from API's suggestion. I think that's an interesting experiment at least. So we still have, what am I missing? I'm missing the Tornado is in here somewhere. Where are you at, NATO? There's the NATO, and there is the, where are you at, Poison? There's the Poison. That should be L6. So let's see what Royale API comes up with as its selections. Once you exclude those 4 cards, the final 10 seconds here of players being able to build their decks. Remember, guys, one little reminder, right after this $100 open tournament, only on Trovo, trovo.live/Rich Slaton. That will be where the tournament is available. All the information will go up after this tournament is after this best of 5 is over on the Trovo side exclusively. So here we go. The time is up. Razzer's getting the game request. We're going to go best of 5, 6 cards banned. Let's go ahead and jump into the action. Pedro on top, Razzer at the bottom. The bans, again, Miner, Firecracker, Poison, Lava Hound, Tornado, and Sparky. So do you think we'll see a lot of like double small spell stuff here, Vulcan?
I think definitely, like, it's going to make a lot of sense. I'm kind of curious if, like, Pedro's going to be running Balloon here. That's going to be another really good option. Okay, he runs Mortar. Makes sense.
Mortar, and then interesting choice here from Razzer going with the Skeleton Barrel and a Night Witch construction.
This could be a Golem deck also. That'll be interesting to see if it's Golem or Giant Skeleton.
Hog Mortar for Pedro. And the Goblin Cage going to take 1 extra shot from that Mortar, so it goes down a little bit quickly, and that's going to be 1 in from the Hog on the right-hand side. First minute away, and it's Pedro taking the first real hit onto Razzer's side. Ooh, this could be Clone here, Vulcan.
That's what I'm thinking. It 100% is Clone. It'll be interesting to see like what his support cards are. If he has Cannon Card, then that's going to be a huge advantage for him. If he doesn't have Cannon Card, it's going to be a little bit rough, but I think matchup favors probably for probably for Razzer right now.
So here we go. It is Cannon Cart, and why do you say Cannon Cart gives Razzer such an advantage in this matchup?
Just because it's like such an easy defense to the Mortar. Like Pedro can never really use offensive Mortars in this matchup now.
Hog does get in, going to get 2, maybe 3 shots here. Yeah, third shot does come in. 1478 right-hand side, first minute and a half away. And now the first big clone push coming in from Razzer on the right-hand side. First Skelly Barrel pops. The arrows don't take the second set of Skellies off, so that timing brutal forces the snowball out. And just like that, Razzer takes the lead back as we head into double elixir time. And Vulcan, does this get worse for Pedro the deeper we get into the double and then triple elixir?
You know, I don't know. Honestly, what I'm looking at right now is those arrows. At first, I was thinking it's like a 100-0 matchup for Razzer, but with those arrows, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And I want to say either of them necessarily have the advantage going into double elixir here.
So obviously, Pedro needs to be doing his best to time those spells well for the clones, especially Skeleton Barrel, and we saw the second Skeleton Barrel pop. What's the key for Pedro offensively? How does he break through? Does he need to switch lanes, or can he push into all this mess on the right-hand side?
He's probably going to want to switch lanes at least a couple times with the Hog Rider, but I do like that he's been playing these defensive Mortars. It's good to be setting up in defense in this matchup because you're never really going to break through an offense with them.
High Valkyrie pops the Ghosted Skeleton. So stops that entire push really, really high, and a pretty solid elixir lead right now for Pedro. Sets up Mortar defensively one more time. So it's been a lot of defensive play here from Pedro so far, cycling Musketeers in the back. We've seen a second Musketeer on the board again. Snowball does come in 10-0-3 right-hand side for Pedro, 12-14, and here comes the offensive Mortar.
I do like that offensive Mortar. He already had the defensive Mortar down. He had 10 elixir and the Musketeer, so well played offense to him. Looks like he's not going to get too much damage. This is going to be very hard for xPedro to come back at this point.
Night Witch picks up the second Mortar, and now building up big at the bridge is the Misfits player, Razzer. Giant Skeleton, Baby Dragon, Night Witch. Does not pop the clone, but now arrows out of cycle for a potential next run on the clone here. Does he go for it? And a late clone, and that snowball takes all the skeletons off the board. Final minute, 5 seconds left, and it is Pedro with a slight lead. Hog Rider picked up by the Goblin Cage.
Close game.
Yeah, absolutely close game here. 7-0-3 now. Vulcan, there is a bit more direct damage with the arrows and snowball. Do you think Pedro can hold on here and win this from spell cycle, or is he going to have to save everything defensively like we just saw?
I mean, he has the advantage right now, so it's looking like, I don't know, man. The question is, with this triple elixir, can Razzer actually break through? It's not looking like it. The arrows are definitely, that was a really smart pick by Pedro because it actually gave him an answer to the clone. Whereas if he'd had like snowball or not snowball, if he had like log or something, he probably have already lost the game at this point.
895 right-hand side. Hog Rider comes in. Snowball tries to predict. Maybe get a little bit of chip damage as well. Hog Rider might get one swing here. If he can prevent this, that's huge for Razzer. Let's go. Final push. This does not look like there's going to be enough speed here for Razzer to get through in time. Arrows get that down to 787. Defensive arrows on that side, and Pedro takes game number 1. Beautifully, beautifully played by xPedro by 113 HP. What a game, what a game, what a game. Vulcan, thoughts on what we just saw? That was certainly a fun one.
Honestly, it was really well played to both of them. You kind of saw that Pedro just played defense the whole game, which in that matchup you have to do. If he had gone aggressive, he would have lost. And he never messed up a snowball. He never, failed in arrows. So that's really what kept him in the game there. It's kind of like it was Pedro's matchup to win as long as he played it perfectly.
There you go. Taking a look at the stats from Royale API. And as you can see, not a ton of matchup data, as this one is not going to be directly central meta. Razzer with maybe a slight matchup advantage when you get way deep down there, but into the 6 of 8 matchup. But overall, Pedro played that one very well. And for you, you're feeling like the arrows really were the key for Pedro.
100%. Without arrows, he had no chance in that matchup.
So first game in the books. And as a reminder, directly after this one, a special edition today, $100 open tournament. For those of you on YouTube, there is the link. The name and password of the tournament will be available only on Trovo directly after this match is over. So as soon as we get through this best of 5, all that will go up. We'll have about a 10-minute time for people to sign up for the tournament. And then, of course, we do this every single week on Wednesdays. And next week, there might be multiple $100 open tournaments. So if you're looking to make some money and you feel like you are phenomenal at Clash Royale, that's a way to do it. And guys, over on the right-hand side, Golem isn't necessarily coming up next. Ishan Sharma. This is all happening live. If you actually know either of these two players and have them on your friends list, you can spectate live right at the moment. I'd prefer that you're here, obviously, but you can go ahead and check it out. This is all happening right now. So game number 1, Pedro, there's the bans one more time. Firecracker was the first pick for Razzer, who was made to pick first by Pedro, who won the coin toss, and then Lava Hound for Pedro. Miner was next, then Tornado, then Poison, then Sparky. Here we go. Game number 2, Pedro up 1 right now on Razzer. And Vulcan, I've said for a while, I think that Razzer might be the most underrated player in CRL at the moment. You look at his numbers, where he stands collectively across the board with his historical numbers. And I know that you're a former teammate of Razzer's. You've known him for a long time. Why do you think some of the public maybe doesn't look at Razzer as elite as maybe his gameplay has shown?
I mean, there's definitely an easy answer for that. It's because he never plays on his main account. So 90% of the time, Razzer's practicing it's in secret, and it actually gives him like an advantage in the competition, and it's really smart on his part. So really, it's just a matter of he only really plays in CRL, so they don't see what he actually does in the off season.
So it keeps himself a little bit quieter so that people aren't able to maybe get as good of information on him. So it's going to be double bait for Pedro. And Razzer going Mega Knight Graveyard, obviously a huge opening salvo from Razzer. He has the arrows in response to the bait, but I guess the big question here, Vulcan, is he running a second small spell?
I'm not too sure. I feel like his last spell is going to be Freeze, so probably not.
And you definitely do not want to be spending Freeze defensively against a bait deck specifically. There's not a lot of big troops there to be pulling down, so 5 Elixir to stop 3 would never be the greatest trade. Here we go. Fireball in, does get on the Musketeer. Might Pedro go ahead? Not going to worry about logging this one. It's single shot, goes opposite direction. Nice Fireball from Pedro to push the Musketeer away from being behind that Mega Knight. Here we go. Final 15 seconds going into double Elixir time. And Razzer does have the lead, but not by a lot. And here we go. Graveyard. What do you think about this Graveyard right now, Vulcan?
I think that a lot of these matchups are just coming down to like their deck picks, it seems like, because there's so many bans. It's kind of like pick a good deck and play it decent, and whoever has the advantage is going to come out ahead.
So cycles the Mega Knight in the back. Chooses to take that first bit, and there we go. So arrows might be the response to the Skeleton Barrel. No, saving the arrows is Razzer. So Healthy Mega Knight, Musketeer, and Mega Minion all opposite direction. Fireball trying to help, but only 2 Elixir left for Pedro. Dark Goblin in the back working on this graveyard, but Mega Knight lead, that's going to be towered down on the right-hand side. Razzer looks like he's going to even things up. Should not be any way to come back from this one. Final 20 seconds. We've got a match on our hands, folks. Could this one be it? Arrows not in cycle. Mega Minion more than up to the task. Final 10 seconds, Fireball cycle, but that should be GG. Well played. Razzer and Pedro going off in both directions, and BMGY freeze arrows at the bridge for Razzer. A little bit of salsa here for a guy who's usually pretty soft-spoken.
I find it really interesting that Pedro didn't go with the Princess in that matchup, because if you have the Fireball, it's kind of like more one-sided. You leave less opportunity to outplay, whereas if he had Princess, he could have definitely had a lot more of a chance, and Razzer would not have won quite as easily, if at all.
Or if at all. So Princess not available, or Princess not on the board in that one, and you can see the struggles here. And we look at this one, going with the Fireball. So yeah, this one typically runs Princess rather than Fireball. Very interesting. Maybe he was thinking he might be up against some sort of Fireball bait, maybe Royal Hogs or something. So he wanted to have the Fireball in hand. And you'll get that. See Fireball and Bomb Tower together. So a lot if he was putting Razzer on the Piggies.
I'm not too sure. Like you honestly, I don't think you even need it versus Piggies. Like you already have the Bomb Tower. It's kind of good enough. So I'm wondering. I'd be very curious to know what Pedro was thinking there.
Well, maybe we'll be able to get some insight from that in the future. Why did that tweet? Man, Twitter has been hating my browser lately. There we go. The tweet that I prepared to send out about this 2 games ago just finally went up. All right, so here we go. Game number 3. Saketh Ram asking in YouTube, what do they win? Small cash prize. Nothing big for this one, just a little something to wet your whistle. So we're all tied up 1-1. There's again one more look at the band draft, the order it was in. Razzer won the coin toss, or Pedro won the coin toss and gave Razzer first pick. So far we've seen a pretty interesting selection of decks, a lot of variety at this point. Vulcan, is there anything that you expect to see that we haven't seen yet?
I'm wondering if someone's going to bring out the balloon, but like maybe with arrows to actually have a counter to the clone. It'll be interesting to see.
Here we go. Game number 3, all tied up. Pedro top of your screen, Razzer at the bottom, and as you can see, 6 bands. Quite a bit. And if you want information on that tournament, you can see on the right-hand side on the scroll, there is the information on the $100 open that will happen right after this, and the link just went into the chat on YouTube one more time.
Oh, Razzer has a banned card.
Oh no, Razzer played a banned card on top of it. Oh boy. Razzer. Oh no. Oh boy. Why? How? Minor ban. Minor ban. And well, that's going to be, if he hadn't played it, that'd be one thing. Game lost for Razzer. We're going to give Pedro the option on this one. 1 second here, just doing a little housekeeping on the inside. See if we want to go ahead and run it back, since Pedro was the one who was affected by the... Oh, hold on, let me go here. So Pedro's saying replay. Here we go. So they are going to remake their decks. So we're not going to call that one a dead game there. So lucky for us, we actually get to see the full best of 5. This is a pretty low... This isn't one of the big games. This is just sort of a fun thing we're trying out to get some data on multi-bans. So Pedro's saying, hey, let's go ahead and do it one more time. Reminder, the bans are Firecracker Miner, Poison, Lava Hound, NATO, and Sparky. Vulcan, you've played both with bans and without bans. Have you ever accidentally put a banned card in your deck, and did you end up what'd you end up doing?
So I've done it so many times. I've won games without playing the banned card. I've lost games where I forgot and I played it. Like so many times.
Here we go. The replay of game number 3. And
one interesting thing here is that Razzer and Pedro actually practiced together, or at least they did the last season of CRL. So I'm wondering if they know some things like about each other's deck pool that we don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, they might be practicing together now because they're in different groups. Razzer and Misfits in Group B and Pedro and Cream in Group A. And of course, both of these teams having some pretty good performances so far. Misfits, at the moment, proven to be the big sleeper that might have a pretty good chance of running all the way through their group.
I agree, and it's like you guys said, it all really came down to, was Wings going to pull through? And so far, he's been pulling through. Everyone else has been doing well, and their team has been looking really strong.
That's one of the interesting parts about that shortened version of the season. Of course, we'll be back with week 3 of gameplay on Saturday, 10 a.m. in the West, 1 p.m. in the East. Same thing on Sunday as well. A lot will be decided by then. So after the cycle of bats, now we're just going into an emote fight. And oddly enough, I'll say this matchup doesn't work. Totally not surprised that this matchup is not doing it for me. In terms of this mashup, I mean. DJ, you're missing the beat.
It's interesting that Pedro played bats and now he's waiting. You would kind of expect like bats to be a quick cycle deck. So I'm very curious what he has at this point.
Yeah, very curious. I mean, what bigger decks does bats fit into?
The only thing I can think of is like, I don't know, man. Even if you had like Royal Hogs, like you'd play the Royal Hogs. So it's, and Pedro's also an aggressive player. I would not consider him to be a passive player. Razzer's more of a passive player, and Pedro's a little bit more aggressive. So it is kind of weird that Pedro's waiting here.
You think maybe that Pedro's playing Loon and waiting for something to go opposite lane, like waiting for a Golem or a Lava, and then goes opposite direction?
I don't think so. He might have Lava Clone though. That is one thing I'm thinking. Mega Knight. Okay, maybe Graveyard? Mega Knight Graveyard?
Mega Knight Graveyard, obviously Miner's banned, so it's not going to be Miner Skelly Barrel. So it's Golem Night Witch, and maybe we'll see if Razzer's running Clone or not.
It's looking like, didn't Razzer play this deck earlier? It's kind of looking like he copied Razzer's deck here.
Definitely looking similar. Lumberjack goes down, rages all that up, a freeze in the opposite direction. So yeah, looking like Pedro is going with Razzer's Graveyard deck. So GY Musky Mega Knight with freeze. And of course that kind of took the surprise out of it. And Razzer going Golem Night Witch Clone.
I mean, on paper, I'm thinking that this is going to be a pretty tough matchup for Pedro here. So we'll see if he can make anything happen, but I don't know. It's going to be hard.
What's difficult about this matchup for Pedro?
Well, the problem is that anytime that Pedro goes in, he has to spend that freeze on offense. And since he doesn't have, like, a poison for... It basically is always going to be a negative Elixir trade because Razzer has those bats to answer. So he can't really ever attack, like, for an even trade. Okay. And then his golem defense is kind of questionable.
Has to save the arrows for these big clones, too. There's a freeze at the bridge. Musketeer does do some pretty high DPS, but Pedro's so far behind on Elixir. Arrows do a good job here, though. Still falling way behind and Golem down. Do you think maybe Pedro just goes opposite lane and tries to steal this?
I think he's going to defend one more time, then that's exactly what he's going to try to do in triple Elixir. I don't think it's going to work, but I think it's what he's going to try to do, and I think he has to do it.
Mega Knight leads up. Clone going to eat that Mega Knight absolutely alive. A nicely timed defensive freeze does not get the healthy single Golem. So Golemites will get on tower. Although now a little bit going the opposite direction. Graveyard in. Mega Knight does get across, not quite in time to tank. Arrows defensively, but now this is the first sign of life we've seen from Pedro with the final minute. Triple Elixir in. The freeze trying to make some room, but not enough skeletons to really take advantage here.
I mean, that was kind of his like last-ditch effort. So at this point, I don't think anything's gonna happen.
Arrows in a little bit early. Freeze comes in defensively, holding on, but the Lumberjack goes right to the tower. Absolutely raged up tower down. Razzer takes game number 3 in style. And that was certainly a fun one. And you saw Pedro, with the idea he was going for, but absolutely brutal and no real way to get anything across the bridge to tank for those graveyards once those clones went in and completely ate alive those Mega Knights over and over again. GG, well played. And why is my overlay not reloading? Hold on, guys. I'm going to try to reload my overlay here. Give me 1 second. I guess we're not going to have the stats there for just a moment. Let me go ahead and try to get that working one more time. Where are you, stats? Let's go ahead and reload this one. There we go. All right, give me 1 second, everybody, and I will get this thing all sorted out. So now you're down 2-1. Going with the copy game didn't really work out for Pedro that last time. What do you think we see from him this time around, Vulcan?
I don't know, man. It's really interesting because the poison NATO ban just makes clone so powerful. So you kind of got to think you got to run something to counter the clone.
That is interesting. We have seen clone twice now. I think both times out of Razzer. Although the clone didn't work for him in game number 1. But in that case, there were arrows and snowball for Pedro. So he had 2 good options. Remember, guys, right after this one, as soon as this match is over, or a little bit after this match is over, we'll talk about the match for a bit, and then we'll head over to Trovo exclusively. We'll kill the YouTube stream and be exclusively on Trovo. So if you're in YouTube, there's the link, $100 open. Anyone can play. Anyone can win. Who knows? Maybe you'll play Vulcan. We don't know. Let's go ahead and jump in to game number 4, Razzer up 1. And again, these 2 songs do not go well together. Razzer splitting archers. Obviously, there's a few options once you split archers.
Yay.
I'm thinking, yeah, this is definitely Graveyard from Pedro. And what? Razzer's running like maybe the deck he was going to run earlier, but he just doesn't have...
Maybe going double bait?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And Skarmy up high, so very baity. Lots of arrows value there for Pedro. Real Delivery comes in to drop right on top of that Inferno Dragon and save the day, but... Oh, a beautiful freeze from Pedro! The Goblin Gang has to come out, but that's a ton of damage. On the same vein, Razzer taking the right-hand side down to 1174, so some trickeration from the Venezuelan. Does get some good damage, but Razzer fires back. So here we are, Vulcan, we're past the first minute, looking at what we're seeing so far. Do you feel like either one has an advantage?
I feel like Razzer definitely has an advantage here because Pedro only really has that one small spell in the arrows, and he's basically, it's all going to come down to how well does Razzer use his princess, because anytime Pedro arrows that princess, he doesn't have it for the Goblin Barrel, and he really has no other defense.
So Night Witch goes towards the princess. Inferno Tower trying to set the line high and not let a good tank get across for this graveyard. Arrows do play on the Goblin Barrel. Of course, we'll see how he contends with the Skeleton Barrel. Obviously, he can go arrows for the Goblin Barrel and then Bomb Tower for the Skelly Barrel.
He could, but it's all coming down to that princess. He really doesn't have a good way to get the princess off the field, so Razzer here just needs to make sure he's protecting his princess, and then he's always going to end up coming out ahead. Inferno
Dragon coming across. Pedro going to reach pretty high elixir here. That princess is within range of being frozen with the tower if he wanted to, decides not to. High Bomb Tower. That's one way to take care of it. Princess off the board. And now a healthy counter push coming in for Pedro. Final 40 seconds of regulation. Here goes the graveyard. Is the freeze going to be available? No. Plays the arrows offensively, though. Night Witch coming in. Skarmy has to come out to pick up the Night Witch. And the freeze trying to make a little bit more room here. Pedro pulling out all the stops, trying to get damage on that tower. Going to be down to under 500 HP, under 400 HP. Oh, my word.
This is really interesting because now that I'm looking at it here, Razzer doesn't really have a good answer to the Night Witch, and Pedro's he's been cycling that Night Witch a lot, and it's been a very smart decision on his part.
Graveyard in, Skarmy high trying to defend, Skelly Barrel trying to distract, Royal Delivery at the back. Is there enough for a freeze? Maybe a late freeze comes in, and it does, but that's going to be some very distracted skeletons. 231, can they get on tower? 164, not quite within arrow's range yet. But that Bomb Tower placed defensively right now, giving a good shield. 97, that should be it here. Pedro goes with the arrows. GG, well played. We're going to game number 5.
I love to see it.
Love to see it. And, you know, people talk a lot about how you try to call deck, try to call matchup, all this stuff. And I'll say this right now, there's not a lot of minds. There might be 50 to 100 minds at most in the game who understand Clash Royale at the level of my co-caster today, Vulcan. And, you know, you're seeing the difficulty even in the moment, trying to see matchup and how someone might... I mean, you can look at this. Also, this is such a weird matchup, obviously, but trying to figure out how these pieces move as time goes on, it can be pretty hard to discern it in those moments.
It really can, and especially with these 6 bans, it's kind of like a whole different game because I don't think anyone would ever run any of the decks that they've run in this best of 5 today.
That's part
But
of
just
the
because
fun.
of the bans, they're here. I like it.
It's a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and take a look at those bans one more time. This was a draft ban, League of Legends style. Pedro won the coin flip, made Razzer go first, and there you see the order. Razzer picked Firecracker. Lava Hound came next for Pedro. Miner then off the board courtesy of Razzer, and then, of course, Tornado banned, and then you saw the Poison and Sparky bans as the last 2. So we are all tied up. This is a full-on best of 5. No half measures here. And don't worry, guys. Once the match is over, we're not done for the day. $100 open tournament. Your chance to win $100. Sponsored by AMG, Aftershock Media Group, Ash and Powerbang, working together to help mobile content creators do a bunch of cool stuff, grow, and do more events for you guys. And we'll pop out here for a second. Check that out. Boom. My cool little AMG logo light thing over here. There you go. Logo light thing right over here. So thanks a lot to Ash, Powerbang, and the entire AMG team. And, of course, to Trovo as well, who's contributed some money to prize pools for this month on top of it. So thank you, everybody, for helping make some of these events possible. I'm really excited. Vulcan, it's so hard to predict this. Any predictions of what kind of decks we're going to see here in Game 5?
At this point, man, I don't know. I think it's impossible. I don't even know where they're getting these decks from. I've seen xPedro run that Graveyard deck before, but the decks Razzer's been running, I've never seen in my entire life. Well, I have, but not like from him.
You're seeing some variations on a theme, right? Like Razzer's last game was running double bait, but just a couple pieces moved in and out, and that's some of the challenge too with so many bans is trying to figure out, okay, this usually has this, how do I make an adjustment, or what might take advantage of the opportunities with certain things being out. And it looks like Pedro might be going GY one more time. Razzer going pretty quick cycle. So it looks like Pedro's just running it back one more time. So we're seeing Musky, Skeletons, and Snowball. Is Razzer going Balloon? Skeletons isn't usually in Balloon.
That's what I want to say, but at this point, it's impossible to actually tell. It definitely looks like it, though.
Right, Lumberjack, Musketeer, Ice Golem. Might be going Lumberloon Cycle, we'll see. Going Ram Rider. Fascinating fast cycle Ram Rider deck. You know, Vulcan, you don't typically see Ram Rider. Oh, and the raged up Musketeer connects twice, 1912. Vulcan, you don't typically see Ram Rider in fast cycle decks. Usually you see Ram Rider in heavier decks. Any thoughts as to why that is?
I think it's because the Lumberjack kind of fell out of the meta. Like a couple seasons, maybe like 1 year ago, you saw a ton of fast cycle Lumberjack decks, but just because of the nerf, you see it run a lot more with like P.E.K.K.A. and Mega Knight. So it's kind of interesting that he's pulling it out today. I would still say it's a good deck. It's kind of like a B tier deck, but because of all the bans today, it's gonna end up working out kind of well.
So remember, there's 6 bans, all those available on the right-hand side for those of you watching right now, and of course the details of the $100 open right below that, or right in the middle there, only on Trovo after this one. There's a link for those of you on YouTube. Tied up 2-2 in games, a full-on, real deal best of 5, and I am loving it right now.
Yeah, I like the Earthquake from Razzer. It's gonna help him out a lot on this matchup. And also interesting that Pedro stuck in Inferno Tower. So I'm thinking maybe he was expecting like a Golem from Razzer in this moment.
Inferno Tower, not one of the fastest and cheapest options for picking up this fast cycle Ram Rider, and back around to Ram Rider one more time. Inferno Tower goes for the Musketeer, and the EQ going to make some room here. Ram Rider might be able to get a connection. No, the Knight gets down. So look, it's a fast cycle deck from Razzer, but as far as graveyard decks go, assuming this is graveyard with all the pieces that we see, Pedro has a pretty quick cycle to get around here as well defensively.
Yeah, and you can kind of see both of them are just kind of waiting for their opponents to make a mistake, you know, get over aggressive, but neither of them really have. Razzer kind of has to attack just to keep his cycle going because he's always going to force out that Inferno Tower and he wants to get value with his offensive Lumberjack. So you're kind of going to see they're just going to play patiently until, like, yeah, one of them messes up.
Oh, what a defensive sequence from Pedro. Jukes goes high with the Inferno Tower. Razzer misplaces the prediction, freeze to wipe it off the board. But Razzer still slightly ahead on Elixir as we go into sudden death overtime. Again, so you can see the same sort of construction here. And again, going with the EQ damage on tower. So at this point, it looks like Razzer's trying to get more cycle damage on the right-hand side rather than worry about getting that Inferno tower off the board.
Pedro, he can almost make something happen here, but he just doesn't have enough elixir for that graveyard. So it's maybe... Oh, this is interesting. This is actually really interesting because Ram Rider is a really good counter to graveyard, and not a lot of people actually realize that. So super, like a nice Ram Rider there from Razzer.
Because it's tanky and can kill skeletons?
Exactly. It just has a super like fast attack speed. So that's why it ends up working out really well. And then also it'll counter push on offense. So it's like if they poison or freeze, then they still have to deal with Ram Rider on the counter push.
Lumberjack gonna get right ahead of that Musketeer. So you see the way that Razzer's putting together these pushes. There's a very particular sequence he's trying to make. This time the Inferno Tower goes low. EQ not there very early, but Razzer should be back to another one fairly soon here. Lumberjack within the Rage, so look at the way that he's stacking inside the Rage, and now back to a Ram Rider. Inferno Tower not back in cycle, so a defensive freeze comes out for Pedro. 2 Musketeers on the board. Ice Golem tanking for the second Musketeer. And again, Razzer's putting the pressure on. Triple Elixir, final 30 seconds. Night Witch and Knight trying to stay. That's so weird. Night Witch and Knight trying to get the work done at the top here. Defensive freeze at the bridge. 10:26 to 15:06. Graveyard in for Pedro. Final 18 seconds. Arrows trying to make some room. Freeze currently not available. Oh my gosh, the freeze comes in. Razzer's defending the best that he can. Pedro's going to do it. Pedro's going to do it. EQ goes the opposite direction. Pedro, in the final 18 seconds, steals the game, steals the match, throws the arrows to punctuate it, and that's how you love to end a best of 5.
Really well played on both parts. You kind of look at that matchup, and you, after seeing what happened there, you kind of think maybe Razzer wishes he had gone opposite lane at some point in this game. But overall, you can't really complain with how either of them played.
No, you cannot. What a wild game that was. A wild set overall. Here you go, taking a look at those. Nope, there you go. Taking a look at the stats from Royale API. And again, you can see the matchup data. There's really nothing here because these decks were so out there, so wild. So now on the back end, Vulcan, taking a look at this matchup, let's break it down and kind of talk about what are the pieces here that worked well, what didn't work well. Your big thought here is that maybe there should have been at least one push in the opposite lane.
I think so. The problem was that Razzer every single time was having to push into xPedro into the Night Witch, and he just really didn't have a good answer for that Night Witch. And then again, even if he switched lanes, then he's splitting up his damage. So I don't know if it would have worked out, but that's pretty much the only thing he could have done differently at that point. I kind of think what he could have tried was playing Ram Riders in the back, like just kind of cycling them in the back on their own so that it forces out an Inferno Tower. And maybe he can miss that push, maybe he doesn't, like kind of depending on what xPedro does. But that's probably the only way he was going to have any chance to actually win that.
So now that we've gone through it all the way, let's take a look at our bans one more time. This was totally different, totally weird, totally wild. What are your thoughts on what we did with the bans overall? On 6 cards being banned, on the drafting portion of it, on the restrictions you have to ban, the categories of troop versus spell building. I'm really curious about, now that you've seen it, how you felt about what we watched today.
I mean, I think that the Sparky ban was a really weird ban, but I liked the rest of the bans. I really liked their decks. They weren't necessarily like the best decks ever, but just the unpredictability really is kind of like a nice advantage for them.
So now we're in a situation where Clash Royale is coming up on 100 different cards in the game. Obviously, CRL currently operating with no bans in head-to-head play, and that's going to stay that way at least for the time being. But who knows what will happen in the future? But are you interested in seeing more, like, typically it's always just been like, hey, we each ban 1 card or ban 1 card on Laws if you're doing the Revel tournaments. Are you interested in seeing more different variations and looking on how we might implement a ban system?
I don't know. See, the problem is now that there's just so many cards in the game, it's kind of like in the past when, like CRL Season 1, for example, you would ban a card and then basically it was pretty easy to predict what your opponent was going to play. Like that was kind of the nice mind game about it. But now with all these cards, there's just so many different decks. Like you can ban Firecracker, you can still run Magic Archer. There's just so many substitutes. It doesn't it kind of just changes the decks being played. It doesn't necessarily change, and it kind of just makes like all the decks worse. But I don't know if like the skill really changes too much when you're doing deck picks.
And it's really interesting way to look at it, and trying to figure out how do you focus it on skill a bit more and give a little more credence to analysis as the number of cards gets bigger and bigger. Guys, again, we're going to end the YouTube stream here in just a moment. Right after, we're going to do a $100 open. The tournament's already created, but don't guess the password, because if you guess the password, you might get knocked out. So I'm going to post the name and password over on the Trovo side in 1 second. There's the link one more time to those of you guys on YouTube. Big thanks to both Pedro and Razzer for the game. Really enjoyed it. Having them, of course, thanks to Coach Try, who's currently coaching in the No Tilt League, for helping administrate today's game. And big thanks to you, Vulcan, for the insight. I hope you enjoyed doing a little bit of casting. It was fun for me. And if people don't already follow you, which they probably do, where can they go ahead and find you?
On Instagram and on Twitter, I'm at Vulcan IRL, and on YouTube, I'm at Vulcan Gaming.
VULKAN, not C. So VULKAN. And make sure you follow him. Of course, I'm at Rich Slaton on all social media right below. For those of you watching this video on YouTube, that's the end of the video. For those of you watching this live, stick around. We're going to go over to the $100 open here in a moment. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe right up here. Your next video should be right around here. And in the comments, let me know who you want to see for your next best of 5 for your next showcase. Once CRL is over, I'll have more options. Right now, trying to work with the confines of CRL practice schedules. And if you have ideas of how to maybe change some game mode stuff that we could try out here on the channel, let me know in the comments as well. And one more time, thanks to Razzer, GG's to Pedro, thanks to Vulcan, I'm Rich Slaton. See you next time.